do you practice animal sacrifice? This was a question that was sent in for Ask a Witch. As a reminder, Ask a Witch always answers something from the perspective of the person who is answering the question. So these are extremely biased. These are what works for us as instructors for Sanctum, and you should take everything with a grain of salt, and as always, do what works for you. The rest of the question continues. If so, how do you do so in a way that is ethical to you? Okay, so the answer is not currently. And let me elaborate on that. One of my teachers that I spent months with every summer from the age of 11 to 18 had a farm. It was, I'm not even sure if you would call it a farm. A homestead might be a better term for it. I'm sort of gnawing on this right now. What exactly distinguishes a homestead versus a farm? She grew food enough for herself, her animals, and for some of her neighbors that she bartered and traded with. But she definitely wasn't producing food to sell.
Technically, that would be a homestead.
So that would be a homestead. All right, good to know. So she had a homestead. And she had animals on her property. Mostly goats, the meanest chickens I have ever spent any time with, the meanest hogs I have ever spent any time with, one single cow, and various game birds that roamed her property. She also kept pigeons. And she killed and ate these animals, and she expected that I would kill and eat these animals. She also used them in animal sacrifice. I was really, really unprepared for this as a child. Balked entirely, did not want to kill the animals, even the mean ones. And so she said that because I was not willing to do that, I didn't deserve to get to eat meat. She said that just because my meat came in sterile, saran-wrapped packages, styrofoam saran wrap, from a grocery store, it didn't mean that there hadn't been an animal sacrifice so that I could eat that meat. And that if I was unwilling to look at the price being paid for what I was eating, then I didn't deserve to eat it. If I wasn't willing to get my hands bloody myself, then I shouldn't benefit from the taking of a life. So she said, if I wasn't gonna help her slaughter the meat, I couldn't eat meat on her homestead. Now, she didn't say homestead. She just said on her land. But I agreed to that. And then I was like, but wait, I'm just gonna leave at the end of the summer and go back to where my great-grandmother's house is, and I can just eat meat then. But that seems really disingenuous and hypocritical, and she makes a decent point. So I talked it over with her and basically was like, all right, you're right. Until I'm willing to take a life myself, I don't get to benefit from that life having been taken for me. Now I want to acknowledge something right now. There are people dying for the things that benefit me. I live in late-stage capitalism. There are enslaved children responsible for the rare earth metals in my cell phone. We drive an electric vehicle that absolutely involved enslaved people somewhere along the way. As an individual, I try as much as I can to buy things that are ethically made. I buy fair trade chocolate. I buy fair trade certified coffee. I buy all of my clothing used from people who are reselling it on Poshmark or The Real, or I go buy it from the people who made it in the depths of the souks in Morocco. Walk until you hear the hammers. Anyway, I try, But I do live in late stage capitalism, and there is a point where I have to acknowledge I am filming on something right now that benefited from child slavery. So there's blood on my hands from that. I benefit from it, but I wasn't willing to face it and take the life myself. So I am being a hypocrite. And yet, there was a degree of hypocrisy I was not willing to engage in as a child. So, yes, Yen.
Counterpoint. The taking of a life is not an intrinsic prerequisite for the creation of electronic devices.
No, they could do non-slavery electronic devices, and we need to be pressuring for them to do so.
The fact that you can't purchase one means that you got to instead face the question of,
do I just not have one?
Do I just not have one?
Which isn't really something that... Yes, I could theoretically not have a cell phone in the modern world. But anyway, I digress. I spent 2 years as a vegetarian, which was really, really hard when Grandma and I were on the road together, traveling, because this was in the early 2000s. I don't know if any of you were vegetarians during the early 2000s, but it was a lot harder then than it is now. I love vegetables. I just want to say, I absolutely adore vegetables. Salad is one of my favorite foods, and that is not an exaggeration. You can ask Yun. I love vegetables. I love salads. I love vegetable soups. But in the early 2000s, you were lucky if you could find a salad in a roadside diner that didn't have fried chicken on it. Everything had bacon bits. All the tomato soup that you could get on the road was made with chicken stock. I ate a lot of cheese omelets. A lot of cheese omelets. Yun did the same when he was a vegetarian. A lot of cheese omelets. But yeah, I spent 2 years as a vegetarian. My family thought this was very strange. If you can sort of picture the scene in My Big Fat Greek Wedding where he tries to tell her that he's a vegetarian, and I think she's the aunt, is like, oh, that's okay, I'll make lamb. My family thought this was bizarre that I was a vegetarian. And I got so much shit about it until I would say that this woman that they all very much respected was the person who had said I was going to be a vegetarian, and then they'd be like, oh, well, I guess if she said. And I had my great-grandmother there to defend my choices. And generally, if she said that I was good to do something, everybody else backed off. But I got a lot of family pressure at first. And they kept forgetting what vegetarian meant. So there was often nothing for me to eat at family potlucks because, oh, it doesn't count if there was bacon thrown in with the beans. Yeah. But it's beans! But you cook them with bacon fat. But it's beans! Anyway, so long story short, I don't know how short I can keep this, but I'm going to try to nutshell it. I have been in martial arts for a very long time. I've studied multiple disciplines, and I was in the process of studying multiple disciplines of martial arts at the time, and I started passing out. Classes were an hour and a half, really physically demanding, and I would white out, and the whole world would go wobbly on me, and everything would feel like I was bouncing on a trampoline, and long tunnels. It was bad. Eventually, Grandma took me to the doctor, and at the time, the doctor was like, you can't be a vegetarian. Again, it's a lot easier now. There's so many vegetarian and vegan protein supplements. At the time, I was trying to get all my extra nutrients from tofu and mung beans and Brazil nuts, and it wasn't working. So that summer, I went back to Mara, and I was like, okay, I gotta take a life so that I can eat meat again. And she was like, really? You actually stuck with it all this time? And I was like, I did, and it was difficult, but I'm ready to take a life because I have to eat meat again. And she's like, you could have just lied. I wouldn't have known. And I was like, bullshit, you totally would have known that I was lying to you, and Grandma would have told on me, so you'd have known doubly what you already suspected. And also, if I'm willing to lie to you as my teacher, then I really shouldn't be learning from you at all. And so we got all set up for animal sacrifice. And I took the first animal life that I had ever intentionally taken, which was a goat. I've shared this story in poetry form before to students. It involved blood all over me, and kind of a baptism by blood thing. And I got to prepare that skin. I got to turn it into something. So I got to learn how to stretch a skin and cure it and turn it into things, learned how to punch leather that summer, learned how to smoke the meat. Goat stew is still one of my favorite meals because I cannot even tell you how that bowl of goat stew hit after 2 years with no meat. And the protein requirements my body had at the time with the martial arts routines I was doing and then working on the homestead, and just, I was so hungry. And I think I will remember the first bite of that goat stew till I die. I hope that I do. But, animal sacrifice was a big part of her practice. I'm aware that not everyone who practices what they call Appalachian folk magic or Appalachian folk medicine engaged in animal sacrifice. A lot of it does involve blood, bone, parts obtained from animals, but not everybody practices that, but she did. And this enabled her to teach me that, as well as some hunting tricks and snares and things that she used. Things that have benefited me ever since. Why I say I don't currently is that I'm just not set up for it. If we had chickens and goats and meat rabbits, which I really want to have someday, if we kept pheasants or other game birds, if I had, her pigeon coop that she used for everything from meat to animal sacrifice again. Pigeon is delicious for those of you who haven't had it. If I had meat animals, I would be practicing animal sacrifice with them. But I currently have about half an acre in the middle of a town. I am on Main Street directly across from a church, and although I am permitted to have 5 chickens, I am not permitted to have goats. It's explicitly in the town rules that I can't have goats. I certainly can't have hogs. And although it is my intention to eventually move somewhere with more land, knock on wood, and have more animals, I currently don't have that set up. So I try to obtain my meat from the farmer's market when I can afford it. Lately, it has become increasingly prohibitively expensive to do so, so I've been buying from Costco because I have a 16-year-old to feed, and I have to prioritize that over my own ethical lines on some issues. So I normally try to support my local farmers. I still try as much as possible. I just bought a bunch of pork, for example, a bunch of bones. But anyway, I digress. And before anyone says, "Oh, you practice animal sacrifice, that's the worst fucking thing that you could possibly do with magic." No, it isn't. If you would like the list of things that I will not do with magic, I'll give them to you. But animal sacrifice isn't one of them, because I'm not a vegetarian. If you are a vegetarian or a vegan, and you do not want to practice animal sacrifice because you do not want to be responsible for taking an animal life, by all means do that. I have a different rant to film someday about the harm that is done with veganism in the current system. I have a different rant to do someday about how veganism does not work in every environment, and in particular, it doesn't work in certain environments for indigenous people who practice their traditional means of raising meat animals or hunting, and I think that it is really, really awful when they get attacked for those things. Those rants are not for right now. If you personally are vegan or vegetarian, then by all means continue being that way, and try to avoid vegan plastic clothing, because it is plastic. But I am not. And if I'm going to take a life in order to benefit from it by eating it, then I am going to use that life in the magic that I practice. And this is for a couple different reasons. One, I am a death witch. I practice death magic. If you want to call me a goess, sure. I am a death witch. That's part of my practice. So if the life is being taken, I'm going to use it in magic. Otherwise, I feel as though I'm almost disrespecting its sacrifice. Additionally, what I cook and what I eat is massively part of my everyday practice of magic, because I am also a hearth witch, a kitchen witch. And that is so woven into my daily practice that trying to separate it out would be devastating to me. It is one of the cornerstones of my daily practice of witchcraft. So if the meat is going in, if the life has been paid, if the price has been paid, then I'm going to incorporate that sacrificial magic into what I'm cooking. And yes, the people I cook for are aware of this. They are aware that I am a witch. I have never kept it secret, and they are aware that the cooking that I do is magical. It is a magical action for me. I do make vegetarian and vegan dishes for all of my community events and clearly label anything that contains meat. Okay. If you would like me to elaborate on how I incorporate the price that has been paid into the magic that I am creating, how I incorporate that sacrifice and the energy of that life into what I am making, I am happy to talk about it. I do also want to say that part of how I do it is that I use as many parts of it as possible. I have in my witchcraft tools bones and skins and teeth. I have made glue from animals. I use the fat. I render fat for making everything from soap to candles when I have the ability to do so. Yeah, I'm a big believer in using every part if I'm going to kill it. And one of the things that makes me really uncomfortable, actually, with the modern supermarket model versus when I used to kill the animal myself is that I don't have the opportunity to make use of all the parts. It actually distresses me how much waste there is in the modern system compared to what my teacher did. Because she used everything, including the energy of that life, including the energy of that sacrifice, but all the way down to the connective tissue. Every bit of that animal got used. And I don't get to do that now that I'm not practicing animal sacrifice. So it is actually something I wish to reincorporate and to attain for myself and my family again, that we should do so. So rather than being something I'm ashamed of, it is something that I would rather I got to do more often. Okay. I think I belabored that point. I think I made it quite thoroughly. If you would like more information on this, by all means, let me know. And in the comments below, I guess you can send me a question for Ask a Witch, or you can answer my question to you. If you are not a vegetarian, why does animal sacrifice make you uncomfortable? Okay. Ooh, and a note. I should probably go on a rant for YouTube at some point about how we actually owe the traditions that practice animal sacrifice a massive fucking thank you, because they fought the legal battles that give us protection as witches in order to be able to practice animal sacrifice as part of their traditions. So I really hate that the witchcraft community in general tends to like attack them for their animal sacrifice while benefiting from the protections they obtained for all of us. Anyway, that's a rant for another day. Be safe out there, everyone.